To study the patterns of inheritance, scientists can perform crosses in some organisms such as pea plants. These experiments help determine how characteristics are passed from one generation to the next. However, this method is not ethically acceptable for studying inheritance in humans. Instead, scientists analyze the occurrence of a particular trait through several generations in a family and organize this information into a chart called a pedigree. Let us consider the bent little finger trait as an example. It is controlled by a pair of alleles. We can use a pedigree to study information about this trait, including whether the trait is dominant or recessive, sex-linked or not sex-linked. We can also work out the possible genotypes of the family members and predict how likely the trait will occur in future generations. Let us draw a pedigree to show the inheritance of bent little fingers in a family. First, draw a key. Males are represented by squares and females by circles. Straight little fingers are represented by white shapes and bent little fingers by black shapes. In this family, we have a male with bent little fingers and a female with straight little fingers. Husband and wife are linked by a horizontal line. This is the first generation. It is indicated by a Roman numeral 1. Each individual is indicated by an Arabic numeral. Their children are shown below them. This is the second generation. Likewise, the third generation is shown below the second generation. Based on the pedigree, we can apply the power of logical deduction to work out the inheritance pattern of bent little fingers. To do this, we can look for clues in the pedigree and apply what we know about alleles and inheritance. To deduce whether the allele for bent little fingers is dominant or recessive, we can look at individuals 5, 6, and 7. Individual 7 has straight little fingers. She must have at least one allele for straight little fingers that she has inherited from either parent. Individuals 5 and 6 have bent little fingers. Each of them must have at least one allele for bent little fingers. It can be deduced that at least one of individuals 5 and 6 is heterozygous. In a heterozygous condition, only the dominant allele can express its effect. Therefore, the allele for bent little fingers must be dominant. Now, we can work out whether or not the allele for bent little fingers is sex-linked. This means the allele controlling the trait is located on the sex chromosome X or Y. Individual 1 has bent little fingers. He is a male, so he has one of each X and Y chromosome. If the dominant allele for bent little fingers is X-linked, individual 1 must have an X chromosome bearing the allele. His daughter, individual 3, must have inherited it from her father. Likewise, if the dominant allele for bent little fingers is Y-linked, individual 1 must have a Y chromosome bearing the allele. His son, individual 4, must have inherited it from his father. However, Both individuals 3 and 4 have straight little fingers. Therefore, it is impossible for the allele for bent little fingers to be sex-linked. Next, we can use the pedigree to deduce the genotypes of the family members. We can also predict the chance of future children having bent little fingers. What are the applications of pedigree analysis? Pedigree analysis is useful for helping those with a family history of genetic diseases. It can help families calculate the chances of their future children inheriting their disease.